Hi everyone, this video is going to be based on the circular flow of income, output and expenditure, but also starting to think in a bit more detail about something that we call injections and withdrawals. Right guys, now first things first, what you've got here is a diagram that we've drawn several times together in class. The circular flow of income, output and expenditure. Now as a reminder, the diagram shows the interrelationship between households and firms and how money flows around the economy. So households are obviously the consumers and the workers. Businesses, they produce output. They're both interdependent, they're reliant on each other. Firms need households to buy output to make profit, but they also need workers to be able to produce goods and services. Households need firms to access output, but also to generate incomes by supplying labour. Right, okay, so when you think about it then, this diagram, it will show us how big the actual economy is. So this is a measurement of the country's GDP. Now I want to link this diagram to the Ppf diagram, but also this Keynesian long-run aggregate supply curve. Now let's start with the Ppf curve here. This diagram, remember, the Ppf itself measures the maximum potential output of the economy. It's what can be produced with an efficient use of a country's factors of production. If we operate at the cross, it means that's the actual output of the country, that's the GDP. So here we're producing CA1 capital goods and CO1 consumer goods. So that's the actual output and that is the potential output. This diagram here at Y1 will also show the actual output of the economy. Remember, firms will only supply what households and businesses and other people that want to buy our output what are demanding. So we're at Y1, but the economy's potential is at YFO. So Y1 to YFO measures the spare capacity, the unused factors of production within the economy. This diagram here, same thing. Cross to potential is spare capacity in the economy. Now that cross and that cross there are the same thing. This diagram is also another illustration of the same thing. This is the actual output of the economy. So if we can make this get bigger, it will mean that cross will move outwards and AD will also move outwards to close off spare capacity. Remember the circular flow, income, output, expenditure, all three approaches will tell us the overall output of the overall GDP of our economy. So income, output, expenditure are all measurements of a country's GDP. Right, okay, now what we're now going to do is to think about this now looking at this diagram here. Right, now again what I've done, I've given you AD on LRAS, on a Keynesian LRAS. We've got here with Ppf, that cross there. Now if AD was to move outwards, we've got actual economic growth. Because we're demanding more, firms now produce more. The economy is moving closer to its Ppf curve or the LRAS potential. So unemployment is falling and the potential output is slowly starting to be achieved across the economy. Now that increase in output has been caused by an increase in the size of the circular flow. So if we've got more incomes or more output or more expenditure going on, we're going to get an increase in the country's GDP. Now I want to think about it now in terms of a bathtub. Yep, that is a bathtub, believe it or not. We've got a tap, we've got a plug, we've got the water level. The bathtub itself is the potential of the economy. So that's the Ppf or the LRAS curve potential. The water level is the actual output. The gap between the top of the bathtub and the water level is the spare capacity. So this water level here, same as that cross there, same as that equilibrium point there. Now if we can inject more life into the economy and make the water level go up, we get an increase in output in all of these different diagrams here. Now to inject more life in, we've got to turn on the taps. There are three different ways of injecting more money into the economy. Government spending, investments and exports. These are the injections. If we can increase these, actual output will increase, AD's moving outwards. What we've got to be aware of though as well is that we have a plug in the bath. If water leaks down the plug hole, it means that the actual output is falling, AD is moving inwards, and we'd have a growth in spare capacity. Now, the plug hole is what we call the withdrawals, taxes, savings and imports. If these things increase, then the circular flow will get smaller. Now, just to give you a couple of examples, imagine the government were to increase spending on the National Health Service. It will now mean that businesses across the country have got to produce more output to produce all the extra things that the NHS would need. That would mean that these firms are expanding their output. But to expand output, they'll need more factors of production, so more people get jobs, which will allow more people to earn more money. This would then create a growth in spending across the economy and create further growth in output. And think about it logically as well. If the government were to spend more money building roads, upgrading road networks, transport links, etc., they need more workers. That high demand for workers would mean that people earn more money, and again it creates more spending, we've got more output, and the economy gets bigger. If foreign people start to buy more of our goods and services, again it means that our firms have got to produce more output. To do that, they need more factors of production like workers, but they're making more profits, so households get more dividends, and that would increase incomes and again lead to more expenditure to take place. So if we have an increase in government spending, investment or exports, the circular flow will get bigger. AD will move outwards, the actual output is increasing, the water level in the bathtub is going up. The withdrawals, these are the things which will make the circular flow get smaller. So if these increase, assuming ceteris paribus, it means that the water level is going down in the bathtub. AD is moving inwards, the actual output is moving inwards, away from the potential, which would lead to a growth in spare capacity in the economy. Now think about it, if we were to increase tax rates, households, when they earn their money, might now pay a higher rate of income tax. That would reduce their disposable incomes. Well, that would mean these people therefore would spend less in the economy, and because they're spending less, firms need to produce less output, and that would create unemployment and lead to another drop in incomes across the economy. Savings. What this diagram is doing is assuming that when people earn their money, they spend it all back. Well, if people start to save a bigger proportion of their money, then again you're going to get less expenditure taking place, which lowers output, creates more unemployment, and incomes start to fall, and again we get more spare capacity in the economy. Imports, well, if we're buying foreign goods and services, our money is leaking out of our economy. It's going to boost the circular flow of other economies across the world. But if we're earning our money and not spending on our businesses, it means that our businesses have got falling demand for output, they produce less, and again, more people become unemployed. Right, so one more thing I want to show you on this. You've got here how injections and withdrawals will affect the size of the economy. Look here, we've got a small circular flow. We've got lots of spare capacity. If we can somehow increase the injections and or reduce withdrawals, then the circular flow will get bigger. So that could be driven by more government spending, more exports, or more investment by firms. Or withdrawals fall. So if we can get people to save less, if we can lower tax rates or get people to buy fewer foreign goods and services, then it will help support a bigger circular flow of income, output and expenditure. Now of course the opposite is true. If we see the economy getting smaller, so the circular flow shrinks, it's driven by injections falling, so less investment, less government spending, less exporting taking place, or a growth in withdrawals, so more savings, higher taxes, or more imports coming into the economy. So going back to this one, if injections increase relative to withdrawals, growth in the economy. If withdrawals increase relative to injections, we get a smaller economy. Now what we can start to do is to think about then how governments and how economists can manipulate the circular flow. So right now, for example, because we've got the risk of a recession because of people not working because of the coronavirus, the government has agreed to increase government spending significantly to boost the size of the economy. They've also reduced some taxes, which will put more money back into people's pockets and again lead to more consumption to take place. We've also lowered interest rates, which means borrowing is cheaper. That might incentivise more businesses to borrow, to invest, to again create a growth in GDP. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll be using a lot of this theory in future videos to be thinking about how we can support and achieve certain macroeconomic targets.